there, and welcome to Dukascopy TV. Today we'll be looking to the least developed countries and their future sustainable goals. I'm joined by Rolf Trager from UNCTAD. Welcome, Rolf.
Good morning.
So firstly, what are the least developed countries?
The least developed countries, they are generally speaking the world's poorest countries. It's a group of 48 countries which are generally marked by their poverty, low levels of income, low institutional, economic capabilities. And because of their structural weaknesses, the international community has adopted a series of measures in their favor in order to help them boost their development process. As I said, it's a group of 48 countries, of which the vast majority, i.e. 34, are located in Africa. But beyond the African LDCs, you have also Asian LDCs, countries like Bangladesh, Laos, Cambodia. You have some of them, 4 of them are in the South Pacific. It's the case of Tuvalu and Vanuatu. And you have one of them which is in the Americas, that is Haiti.
So 48 countries, that's a significant number. So what can these countries do to begin the sustainable process?
In our report, the Least Developed Countries report, which UNCTAD publishes on an annual basis of 2014, we design the general lines of the development strategies which these countries could follow in the coming period, because we are going to a new period for developing countries. It's the period covered by the Sustainable Development Goals, which will be in place between 2015 to 2030. So in order to reach these development goals, it will be a big challenge for the least developed countries, because these are the poorest and the least capable countries among the international community. So what the report says is that there should be a combination of both domestic policy measures and international policy measures. In terms of domestic policy measures, there are 3 fields of interaction and intervention which the LDC report of UNCTAD highlights. The first one is resource mobilization, because for these countries to develop, they need to invest in infrastructure, to invest in education and health, and in order to do this, they need to mobilize resources, both from domestic sources and from international sources. So domestic sources, it refers to taxation and to the establishment of a working financial system. But also in terms of international resources, these countries, they need to use international flows like FDI, foreign direct investment, but also ODA, that's official development assistance, from rich countries to the poorest countries. So that's for resource mobilization. The second type of policy, of domestic policy, which we are advising these countries to adopt, is industrial policy. And what do we mean by industrial policy? It's all those types of policy which have as the objective to diversify the economy, to take the economy and the workers in an economy from less productive jobs to more productive jobs with higher value-added activities. So typically going from agriculture towards industry and modern services. And finally, there are macroeconomic policies still in the field of the domestic policies, which are very important, and they have a very important role both in ensuring financing for investment projects at reasonable conditions, so preferably low interest rates and long repayment periods, so that you can have long-term investment in infrastructure, in industry, in agriculture, in order to modernize activities. But also in terms of financing public investment, particularly in infrastructure. So these are the 3 areas on which, to which we are drawing attention in this report. So resource mobilization, industrial policy, and macroeconomic policy.
So you touched on it quite briefly there, the financial crisis. So in terms of economic growth, how have these countries reacted to instances like the financial crisis in 2009?
Let's say that the financial crisis of 2008-2009, it had different types of effects on the least developed countries. Let's say that the more direct type of effect, which is in terms of financial flows, did not, particularly in terms of short-term capital flows, did not affect these countries so much and so strongly as it did in the case of other developing countries and emerging markets, because these countries, they are relatively closed in terms of financial opening. So how were they affected? They were more affected by their trade flows and by commodity prices, because most of the exports of LDCs, of least developed countries, are made up of commodities, of unprocessed products. And about 65% of their total exports are crude oil. So since after the crisis there was a sharp drop in the prices of crude oil, they were very directly affected by the downfall in oil prices. So for instance, a country like Angola, which is an LDC and a very important exporter of crude oil, it experienced a downfall in its economic performance from a GDP growth rate of 20% one year to a recession of 1%. So it was a huge economic downturn. And more generally, those LDCs which are more dependent on exports of commodities, they saw their export revenues fall precipitously after the beginning of the crisis. And then you had other types of indirect effects of the financial crisis in terms of other types of financial flows, particularly FDI, foreign direct investment, and also in terms of ODA, in terms of the flows of official development assistance to these countries. As I said earlier, ODA, official development assistance, is a very important source of financing for the development of these countries. And since all of the rich developed countries adopted measures of fiscal austerity, this hit directly the economies of LDCs, because as a consequence of the measures of austerity adopted by the developed countries, they enacted several budget cuts, including their aid budgets, with the exception of UK and a couple of Scandinavian or Nordic countries. But most other donor countries cut back on their aid budgets. And so this had a direct effect on the finances of least developed countries.
It certainly is a fascinating subject, and thank you so much for your insight today, Rolf. Thank you,
Shahnid.
That's all from Rolf and myself for now. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to keep clicking back to Dukascopy TV. Bye for now.